Many years ago, I met artist Jodi Ohl at a retreat where we were both teaching art classes, and she was the house lady. You have been the house lady to me forever because you love houses, and you always have beautiful artwork featuring homes.
Thank you, Julie. Yeah, homes are my favorite subject of all. It's like building a sense of community, and I figure each one of these little houses has a little bit of a personality, just like the people that reside in it. So what I thought today we'd do is a little project on these new boards called gesso boards, and it's kind of a little take on my funky little cityscape. So you ready to get started?
Yeah. Now, for people who are nervous drawers, you have promised that the drawing is not
easy
scary.
For you. Absolutely. So one of the first things that I like to do, and we'll just kind of look at some of my samples, is really most drawing is really about basic shapes. So if you think squares, rectangles, circles, triangles, you can do that, you can draw. So and what I like to do for what I call the happy shacks, they're a little bit simpler. So one thing I love to do is I'm using actually a water-soluble pencil. This is a gray.
You're also holding it in a way that a lot of people do not hold a pencil.
Right. Well, if you think about it this way, that if you further down, the more tight you are, so the further back, you're a little bit looser. I like a sketchily approach. The older I get, the more I get a little bit shaky with my lines. So I figure if I do it messy anyways, it's not going to matter.
Let's embrace the shake.
Let's embrace the shake. So I'm just drawing a border, and I'm going to paint that in later. So the next thing I do is I try to establish where my horizon line is, and in some way, shape, or form. I'll do that, or
and
I will.
A horizon line, for people who don't know, is where the sky meets the ground.
Exactly. Where visually, where the sky meets the grass. So I'll either do that, or I'll decide what my main house is going to be. So I could go either way. So let's do the house first. Actually, I'll take that back here, and I'm doing a triangle shape. And again,
so far,
very
this
light.
is drawing I can do.
Yes, you can definitely do this.
And the nice thing I'll point out is that when you use a water-soluble pencil, people may not know this, but essentially, especially if you're on top of a board that's already gessoed or pre-treated, it's erasable.
Well, that's the thing, and it's erasable with water.
Yes.
So that's what I love about it. So you just want to go in with basic shapes. So I just drew a really, and you want to, if you add a little funk to it, a little crookedness, that's always good. And I'll draw a little crazy window.
Well, I like that you call these happy shacks, because I think they do make you happy when you look at them, and the less you put on yourself the strain of needing to be perfect, needing to be a certain way.
Don't worry about that. And one little trick is I do try to make each house a little bit different. So we're just going to roll through that. And so let's see, if this one in front, this one behind, so maybe I'll just make this one taller, just to make it a little bit different.
And why do you try to make each one different? Is there a design reason behind that?
Well, I just think it looks pleasing to the eye. They're like a little bit different characteristics to look, to, you know, kind of be a variety of the pieces.
And I was going to say, once you have it.
Yeah, then once you have the drawing done, then I switch it up and I'll go through and I'll add this black Stabilo pencil, which you can go and add a little bit more detail, get a little bit of shading.
I can see how much darker actually this one is. So it's like you do your initial sketch very lightly and then you move on.
Right, and then the next tool you're going to grab is a water brush. And what I like to do is just get some basic shading in. So I'm just going to, activate this with water.
People have never used water brushes, they're exactly what they sound like, which is a brush that has water inside.
Right, and you can just pull out the graphite a little bit, you get some basic shading. When you're all done, work through, it looks something like this. And what this does is it creates some of the values that you're going to need for your...
I was going to say, this is what oil painters do.
Exactly,
they start working in grays.
And I'll let this dry for a little bit, then I'll go in and I'll start blocking in the color. Okay. So one little tip about this, it's like kind of like watercolor. So the more color you add in layers, then it basically...
So it's interesting that you say it's like watercolor, because you're actually using acrylic in a watercolor-like sense.
Yes, I'm using a very liquidy watercolor. So I am going to just go ahead and just do a couple rounds. So basically I would do this a couple of times and I'm grabbing...
So you're putting the paint directly from the palette onto, but then you're diluting it with water.
A little bit of water. So
and do you have some tips on how you use your water so it doesn't get contaminated?
Yeah, so I like to use this 3-tier brush, so basin rather. So the first water well, you'll use your dirty water. Next one, the semi-dirty water, and then the last one is your clean. So you're not constantly changing your water brush, and you know you keep yourself doing what you want.
Because I was gonna say, I'm very well known for using basically brown water to do things, and guess what? Your white paint
And
is
you don't
not
have to
white
go back to
anymore.
the to the water basin and clean it. So I like to take my time and I'll build up the layers. And so the more layers you have, the juicier the painting actually becomes. So, and you do want to let these dry in between layers.
Do you start with your lightest color and work darker, or does it not really matter?
Well, sometimes I try to just kind of bounce around. So I don't really do my lightest color, but I will do a light wash. You notice how, see that's the pink in there?
Yeah.
I will start darkening up the values with another layer. So then I'm creating, you can kind of see it a little bit better over in here.
For people who don't know value, because you also talked about it when you were talking about the one that's more in grayscale, what do you mean by value as opposed to color?
Well, instead of just being flat, you're going to have dark, lights, midtones. And by doing this underpainting, you can see how I'm already building up the tones on the roof. When you paint over it, rather than just be flat red, it's going to have that gray tones underneath and gives you a little bit more body.
So that's why you're using that thin paint, because then the underlayer shows through.
Exactly. And it's very transparent, so it can be a little bit streaky. So my last little step, after you get the painting done, I like to add character with my pens. So basically you're going to use a permanent ink pen, and again, I would use a very light approach.
Now you're not trying to trace exactly on the line, and I notice you're still using a kind of brushy stroke as you go.
Brushy stroke.
Some people would panic. They'd be like, ah.
No, but this is like the quirkiness of it. So look, even if it's a little bit wobbly, you can just be really sketchily. And you can notice on some of these finished pieces, I have the little loopies, and you can add, if you're a doodler,
all sorts of detail. I am a doodler, and I would even say, if we look at this one, which is obviously the one that's been penned in, I can see how much character and just really dimension that all that pen work takes.
And I'll do one little last trick. So if you want to add one more little bit of dimension, you can also activate with the pen with water, and so you can get just a little bit more gray. So
very cool.
Those are the tips of the day for my Zen houses.
And the finished pieces are absolutely gorgeous. Thank you, Jody.
Thank you so much.